Just to point out how dangerous Twitter groupthink can be and how poisonous and how toxic people can be once they've made their mind up to go with the crowd and not think critically about what they're saying or even listen to what they're talking about and judge for themselves. They just get on a rant about things that they've heard other people say. The topic today is Joe Rogan, and contrary to popular belief, Joe Rogan is not a right-winger. He's a person basically on the left who listens to people on the right like I do and doesn't judge them, tries to understand them, and gives them the benefit of a doubt that they're not bad people just because they don't agree with his politics. Joe Rogan has been very outspoken about supporting Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders in the recent past, and there's no reason to think of him as a crazy loon right-winger. Now, some people are going to think that no matter what, just because he looks the part. He looks like the jock. He is the jock. He is an athlete, and he looks the part of the muscle man, knuckle dragging, the stereotypical thing. Yeah, he can look that way, and he's a wonderful interviewer, and I learn things from his show, and I don't, hang on his every word or anything like that. But it's interesting reading the Twitter comments the last few days about Joe Rogan, because he said something about cancel culture. And when I talk about cancel culture, I get kind of the same treatment, only since I'm not a big star, I don't get the same kind of raking over the coals that Joe Rogan might get. So let's look at some of these comments. Somebody says, can Joe Rogan point to one day in American history where straight white men shut the fuck up? If you start the clock in 1787, they've had roughly 85,500 opportunities to give it a rest for a day and have never once let the goddamn earth spin without offering an opinion. If you were in charge, whoever you are, I'm not saying white men are in charge, but traditionally white men have had the power. We understand that, and as much as possible, most of us are trying to open our eyes to the idea of how we can help that not be the case and have other people have voices too. And Joe Rogan does that on his show. It's not just a bunch of white fellas sitting around talking. He has guests of all persuasions on his show. He has women on his show. He has African Americans on his show. He has all kinds of people on his show that wouldn't have a platform necessarily if it weren't for the Joe Rogan show. He's introduced me by just vicariously watching his YouTube show to people I would never have heard of before had it not been for his show. So it's not just a show about white dudes sitting around and talking about how wonderful we all are or anything like that. But listen to this vitriol coming from people. Joe Rogan really thinks that straight white men are fighting for their right to continue being allowed to speak. He's that insecure about people in other demographics finally get a shot at an equal voice. What a fucking loser. This from the Palmer Report. I don't know who the Palmer Report are, but they have their own little blue, it's not blue check mark anymore, but they have their own little check mark, so they appear to be important in some way. Joe Rogan has a blue check mark too, so I'm assuming that he is also just as equally important as the Palmer Report. Hey, somebody agrees with Joe Rogan here. Joe Rogan is right. It's open season on straight white men, and you all need to stop bowing to the mob. Stop apologizing for being straight white men. Thank you, Tommy, for that. Tommy has a check too, so I've never heard of her. So she appears to be important because she has a check. But thank you, Tommy. Yes, we do feel sort of like we should just stand in the corner with a dunce cap and not say a word ever, ever again because we were born a certain color that we didn't ask to be born this way. We just happened to be born this way. Uh, Right wing Cope says Joe Rogan says straight white men are not allowed to talk. Eventually, while complaining on his podcast, paid for by $100,000 or $100 million Spotify contract. Wow! So you can't make money in this world without being thought of as a sellout, I guess. Somebody says, everyone calm down about Joe Rogan. Woke mob is what I call my pussy. And no, I don't want them to talk while I sit on their face. I don't get this. It sounds sexy and dirty, so I approve. Joe Rogan's official stance on Israel Palestine is that they need to do mushrooms together and experience ego death. I would agree with that if you know what this person is talking about. That would be a good idea, actually, to have people chill and vibe together and realize your commonality. And mushrooms would help that situation. Mushrooms and other DMT type experiences. That would be a wonderful thing, actually. Here's a self-hating white guy. Joe Rogan says that if the woke mob wins, straight white men won't be allowed to talk. Straight white men, victims, since checks every history book. Absolutely never. Yeah, grow up in my shoes, Jay Relling. Um, there's plenty to look there and see victimization all over my past history, and the key is to not get obsessed with your own self victimization and your self victimhood and the bad things that happen to you in life. You can become fixated on the bad things that happen to you in life, and then you lack empathy. You lose empathy for everyone else who has bad things happen to them in their lives. And that seems to be what people grow up with, this idea that straight white males are the ones causing all the problems when we have things happening to us that are just as bad, just as horrible. We don't just get our way in life because we're white males. And again, we didn't ask to be born this way, so you're judging us based on the color of our skin, which is exactly the opposite of what Martin Luther King said. Podcast giant Joe Rogan has warned that the logical conclusion of woke cancel culture is that all straight white men will be forbidden from talking or even leaving their houses. That's, that's a little extreme. Let me slide this back over here where it's supposed to be. That's a little bit extreme, but Joe Rogan is a comic. He is a comedian, and part of being a comedian is caricatures. You exaggerate some of the things that are going on and try to make something funny out of it. So that's the main thing Joe is. He's not a right-wing commentator. He's more of a left-wing comedian. Again, open to more ideas than just his own. Emma Kelly. I don't think she's related to the clown I grew up watching, Emmett Kelly, but we'll see. Says Joe Rogan made his comments about straight white men not being able to talk due to woke culture on his podcast, which was acquired by Spotify in a $100 million deal, and that has 11 million listeners per episode and lets him talk about literally anything. Would you rather he was not allowed to talk about anything? Would you rather that was the case, that he was just not allowed to talk about anything? And would you rather he just did it for free for your entertainment? I mean, I'm not a great capitalist. I don't capitalize on my talents as much as I should, I suppose. But I don't hold any grudge against anybody that becomes rich and famous just because they're rich and famous. I found out about Bridget Phetasy through Joe Rogan, and Bridget Phetasy is like become one of my favorite things on the internet. Things, I don't want to call her a thing, but one of my favorite people on the internet. Her show is the thing that I'm referring to. One of my favorite things on the internet is the Bridget Phetasy show, and I wouldn't have even known about her if it wasn't for Joe Rogan. So this is ridiculous here. Ricky Gervais, in tongue-in-cheek mode, says, "Damn you, Joe Rogan. I started this gangster shit, and this is the motherfucking thanks I get." Yeah, Ricky was doing it long before everybody else. You're right. Daily Caller says giving into the woke mob will result in straight white men not being allowed to talk. And they go on with their take on things. And it looks like I got most of the stuff. If you scroll down further, it's just talking about UFC stuff. Oh, speaking of Bridget, here she is. "I can't get over the fact that this guy gave up being a badass Apache pilot prince to ending up on a podcast talking about his daddy issues and Joe Rogan." So, Prince Harry, Prince Charles. Okay. Yeah, people overestimate podcast stuff too. I was in a one of the big box stores the other day getting my medicines, my many medicines, and I was talking about to another customer about losing my voice that day. It's coming back. And she was recommending me some products that might help with that, and I already had those products, but that was very nice of her. And I said, I can't really do my own voice, but I can do Alex Jones, which is weird. And she was like, "Who's Alex Jones?" You'd think by Twitter standards everybody would know who everybody is by now, but people don't even know who Alex Jones is in the real world. So I don't know how big of a platform even the biggest podcast platform actually is. Talked to my doctor. I said something. I mentioned something I heard on the Joe Rogan show about some health thing, and asked her what she thought of it, and she's like, "Who's Joe Rogan? I don't know who that is." And I had to let her know. He's somebody with a very large audience podcast. But it's kind of like there's so many things to listen to and look at on the internet that not everybody is. Like seriously sitting around listening to every single word people say. It's just that these things get blown up on Twitter and they're out of context. And if you listen to Joe Rogan in context, he's not somebody that feels put upon. He's not somebody that's like sitting in a corner going, "Oh my God, they're trying to shut me up." No, he's going to keep up right on talking. He's I admire that about him a great deal, and I tried to emulate that in some respects when I can talk. I can't always talk. Being nearly 60 now, it's like the voice does not always cooperate, and then when the voice cooperates, sometimes the brain doesn't cooperate and get the words to my tongue out as I'd like them to. He's not wiping his tears with $100 bills. Oh my God, what is up with people? I guess some of these people are trying to be funny. I will settle for Joe Rogan not being able to talk. See, some people just come right out and they're pro-censorship. And I've said it before on this show, on my show, that if you're not for the freedom of speech for everyone, even people that you think you don't like. You are not for freedom of speech. And first they'll come after those people that you don't like and or you don't approve of. And then they'll come after people that you do approve of. And then they'll come after you. And it's never going to stop. We'll just be we'll get that Elon Musk brain transplant, and every every time that we think a bad thought, we'll be electrocuted or something to get us to stop thinking bad thoughts. I don't know. What do you think? There's a nice quote here. Ben Shapiro opened my eyes. Joe Rogan opened my mind. I'm not a Ben Shapiro fan really, but it's not. I don't want him censored or muzzled or anything. It's just he's not to my liking. He's not for me. And that's the attitude you got to take. So if somebody doesn't appeal to you, they don't appeal to you. That doesn't mean that you try and take their voice away. Somebody says, I never knew Joe Rogan, who he was. He seemed okay when he hosted that show where people ate bugs. Here he's got Abby Martin on a show. That's somebody that doesn't always have a platform to speak on because she's very controversial and outspoken, and Joe will have her on his show. And some of you will hate him for bringing her on the show, won't you? I know you. But anyway, I'm finding that a lot of these posts prove Joe Rogan's theory correct. That a lot of people would be very, very happy just to shut him up, shut me up, shut every white person up. Even though, again, we were just born this way. We didn't ask to be born this way, as far as I know, unless there's something before this life that happens. Hey, what color would you like to be? I would like to be the color that's in power, for the most part. I don't think it works that way, you know. I think we're just, I've been in countries where I was the minority, and there are those countries, and I had a nice Florida tan going on, but I was in the Caribbean, and I was at the beach at the Caribbean, and I remember distinctly some really nice people walking by me going, that guy is really white. Which I thought was, it still cracks me up 20 years later, more than 20 years later. But, it's sometimes just because you're in this country or another country that's predominantly white, you get blamed for everything that goes wrong because you're in the majority. And again, it's not my fault that we're in the majority. If it were up to me, I would be a Native American. I would have chosen that lifestyle as long as there was good internet. That's if it were up to me. But anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I wanted to comment on the comments about Joe Rogan the past couple of days and how a lot of people online just prove him totally right. Have yourself a great day. We will talk again soon. Now I've got to do a bunch of stupid editing, which I can't stand. But I'll do it anyway. I'll do it for you. And sorry about the weird camera angle, but I'm trying to disguise my lower teeth right now, which are a wreck because I put off a lot of dental work due to COVID, and now it's going to be probably I'm going to need dentures, just a full-out denture situation, and we'll see how that goes. But this is the only angle I could get that disguise the fact that I need dental work as much as possible. Peace now, peace forever. Love to everyone, especially everyone who is being trampled underfoot right now by governments that seem to regard them as disposable. Peace.